You should see me when you're cool. Watch me make 'em bow. One bite, one bite, one bite, one bite. Stupid walking down here. I go red hot like a demon. I go from all that radius.
Hello everyone, my name is Olive, and sharing this story today took a lot of courage out of me. You see, I wasn't born a girl, but today I am one after I transitioned. But my story runs far from a typical happy transitioning story because I regret doing it. My story is a complicated one. I'm not even sure I understand it myself, but please bear with me. I was confused about my gender ever since I could remember. Confused and jealous. Jealous of who? My female twin sister. Her name is Ellie. I've always envied her for being a girl, and all the things she was able to do which I couldn't. At first it was little things. I wanted to play with her toys. I would only wear socks with frills at the ankles because I liked the way they looked. I preferred my hair longer so I could tuck it behind my ear and run my fingers through it. Despite my jealousy, I never let the body I was in stop me from expressing myself. I shied away from rough boys' games, and I hated being dirty. I went to birthday parties where my mom would dress me in a little suit and bow tie, but I would spend hours watching the girls in their pretty dresses, not understanding why I couldn't have a flouncy skirt and a little tiara too. When I started school, I was told I'd have to get my hair cut, that it wasn't an appropriate length for a boy. My mom took me to the hairdresser, and I screamed and cried so hard that I passed out, but they cut my hair anyway. When I was 7, my parents were called into school to speak to the teachers about me. They said that I refused to play with the other boys. I wouldn't speak to anyone for hours at a time. I insisted on being Ellie's sister, not a brother. That's the first time the word trans was mentioned. I was taken to see the doctor, and they asked me loads of questions. My parents, too. I knew that something important was happening. They sat us down and explained that it was no one's fault, but that I had been born in the wrong body, and that's what my behavior was expressing. I remember feeling excited, like I was finally being listened to. Someone understood. My parents struggled. It was very hard for them to accept this, but they tried their best to keep an open mind to it. I could notice that my dad's mouth would become a hard line when I walked into the room wearing a dress. My mom would well up when people asked her how her son was. Despite it all, they spoke to the school and explained that I was going to be living as a girl, that I would be living as Olivia. They let me grow my hair again, and I could go back to wearing frilly socks. All I could remember from that time was how happy I felt. Finally, I was going to get to be one of the girls. As soon as I became old enough, I started to take hormones. They stopped my voice dropping and physiologically female. You'd think that my story would have a happy ending at this point, right? Well, that was what I thought too, until reality failed me. After the surgery, that everything went downhill. First, it was my parents. They struggled in accepting what I had done, even though they expected it. Our relationship, which had been strained before, became almost non-existent. The only person who fully accepted me was Ellie. A while after the transition, my sister took me out to a bar with her friends for the first time. I was excited. It was my first time showing myself off to the world as a girl. I was still insecure about it, but my sister tried to boost up my confidence. I put on full makeup and a nice outfit. However, my excitement didn't last long because I was constantly hunted by a feeling of discomfort. I'm not sure why, but I was there being my most feminine self. I thought I'd finally truly feel like a woman. But every time I looked in the mirror, I felt regret and disappointment because my expectations of this transitioning did not match my current reality. If anything, the feeling of existing in the wrong body hit me again. I was terrified. I just kept drinking to try and forget. By the time we got to the dance floor, I could barely stand. I danced with Ellie. I danced with strangers. I did shots at the bar. At some point during the night, I met a man. I'd never had attention paid to me before. I wanted to be able to giggle flirtatiously and flick my hair as they did on TV. I thought I'd finally feel at home in my new skin, but I felt uncomfortable and awkward. I was afraid he'll know. When he touched me on the arm, I panicked and ran away. Ellie ran after me and asked me what was wrong. I told her that I didn't like it when that stranger had touched me. She laughed and said, "Welcome to being a woman." I tried to laugh along with her. I was too scared to tell her what I really meant, that I didn't like him touching me because I still felt wrong in myself. When we were in the taxi home, I closed my eyes and pretended that I'd had too much to drink. Ellie and her friends were joking around and having a good time, whilst all I could think was, I've made a mistake. As the months went by, that feeling only got stronger. Rather than the elation and freedom that I'd felt when I was younger, I was uneasy all the time. My new shape still wasn't right. I didn't understand. This was everything I'd ever wanted. People kept asking me what was wrong, but I couldn't tell them. I was ashamed of myself. What was wrong with me? All the time and effort and heartbreak that both me and my family had been through, I felt ungrateful. I became more and more withdrawn. I stopped going out. I would just sit in my room in the dark. If I ever happened to catch sight of myself in a mirror, the curves of my body just filled me with disgust. I started having panic attacks where my chest would tighten and I couldn't breathe. If I wasn't happy as a man and I wasn't happy as a woman, how would I ever be happy? One day, my dad knocked on my door. We'd barely spoken for months. He came in and sat down at my desk. He cleared his throat. "So it seems you're unhappy," he said. I just did a small nod. My heart was beating so fast. He looked up sadly. "You weren't happy as my son, I know that. I've made my peace with it. But looks like you're not happy as my daughter either. And that hurts me. All a parent wants is for their kids to be happy. You're still so young, and you've got a lifetime of choices ahead of you. I don't want you to feel like you've made a mistake. You did the best you could do with what you felt at the time. Maybe you're a mix of Oliver and Olivia. Maybe you're both of those people. Maybe you've spent so long trying to be who you thought you were supposed to, you've left behind who you actually are. Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. It seems to me that there are levels now. Everyone's got a bit of everything, and they're allowed to be that." He got up and patted me on the shoulder. "Something to think about." After he'd gone, I sat for a long time thinking. Then I slowly walked over to the mirror. As I looked over my body, I tried to breathe through the waves of panic. Was he right? Could it be true that I identified as both Oliver and Olivia? I realized that it's not about the way I look, but about how I feel inside. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. After that day, I spent hours looking into it, speaking to professionals, and once I was finally honest about my feelings, I got the help I needed. I finally have context for all those years of feeling like an outsider. I'm just Olive now, and I identify as gender fluid. Sometimes I have Oliver days, sometimes Olivia days. I found a way to be happy in my own skin after years of turmoil. My relationship with my parents is improving every day. I think all along I was just looking for acceptance. This was hard for me to share, but I'm glad I did. If you're struggling with your gender identity, please know that you're not alone. Things are not always black and white, and it's okay, if anything. Thanks for watching this video and listening to my story.
Sorry.